Hello and welcome to the Connection Audit. We are Kirsten and Blake. We're normal talk about modern relationships, online dating, and the outdated scripts that influence our lives.
But today we are reviewing a conversation we had with Sally, a single parent who has been on a journey that we think a lot of you will be nodding your head along to as we unpack it. So, if, like Sally, you're done with chaos and ready for clarity, you're in the right place.
We'll be respectful, we'll be honest, no shaming, no grandstanding.
Yeah.
Today we are exploring the reality of a woman who followed every single rule she was ever handed.
Right.
Every rule.
Exactly. Sally is 41. She's a single mom. She's a coder. And for a really long time, she was a woman living inside this perfectly constructed, culturally approved life where she was just entirely, profoundly invisible.
It's a heavy word, invisible. It is. But it fits perfectly here. We're going to explore a massive central question today. How does a woman go from living that conventional checking the boxes existence to finding her true voice, healing from a devastating betrayal, and eventually helping to run a women's sovereign community?
It's a huge shift.
Massive. So we're looking at the illusion of the perfect life script. We're looking at the quiet erasure of women's identities and motherhood, the absolute devastation of relational dishonesty, and, well, really the radical life-changing act of demanding emotional literacy.
I mean, it is a trajectory that reveals so much about the social conditioning we all just sort of swim in.
Yeah.
When we look at the early part of this journey, we see a pattern that is almost universal in its application. Let's just rewind to the very beginning. Early 20s, university.
Such a vulnerable time.
Right, you're in that incredibly vulnerable stage of life where you are technically an adult, but you're still desperately looking around for cues on how to actually be one.
You're just grasping for instructions.
Exactly. And what does society do? It hands you a checklist.
And Sally took that checklist and she basically treated it like a sacred text.
She really did.
She met her partner at university, they graduated, they both secured solid jobs, they got the small house with the incredibly big mortgage.
A classic first step.
Yeah. And crucially, they won the enthusiastic, overwhelming approval of both sets of families. Everything looked absolutely flawless on paper.
Perfection.
If you were looking at her life from the outside, you would think, well, she has won the game. She's figured it all out.
But what we need to break down here is it's what sociologists sometimes call the relationship escalator.
The escalator.
Yeah. It is this societal script that operates almost invisibly, but with immense force. It functions just like a conveyor belt.
You just step on.
Once you step onto it, usually in your early 20s, maybe at university, just like Sally did, the momentum simply carries you forward. You hit the milestones one by one.
Degree.
The job, the cohabitation,
The mortgage.
the family approval. And the momentum is so incredibly strong that it actively masks an absence of conscious choice.
Oh, that's such a good point.
People moving along this escalator rarely stop to ask, do I actually want to be taking this next step with this specific person?
Right. The question isn't about the person, it's about the timing.
Exactly. Instead, the question is merely, well, we've been together for 3 years, so I suppose buying a house is the next logical step. You begin to mistake cultural compliance for personal fulfillment.
Mistaking cultural compliance for personal fulfillment. Wow.
Son.
That phrase is a gut punch, isn't it? Because it describes a very specific kind of pain.
It does.
You do all these things, you follow the rules, and you receive constant external validation. Society pats you on the back, your parents are thrilled.
Everyone is clapping for you.
Your friends are at the exact same life stage, hitting the exact same milestones, but inside there is this nagging, unidentifiable feeling, a quiet sort of suffocation.
And that suffocation is the narrowing of identity. When you enter into a partnership that is primarily driven by external milestones rather than internal compatibility, the collective we of the relationship begins to slowly consume the I.
It eats you alive, honestly.
The individual identity is sacrificed to maintain the structure of the partnership.
Yes, especially when the entire foundation of that we is built on external expectations rather than a deeply authentic, constantly negotiated connection.
Right.
If you are listening to this right now and you've ever found yourself nodding along to a life choice just because it seemed like the next logical step, you know, the kind of invisible momentum we were talking about here.
I feel trapped by it.
You really do. You wake up in that small house with the massive mortgage, you look in the mirror, and you realize you have absolutely no idea whose life you are actually living.
It's wild.
You're wearing a costume of adulthood that someone else picked out for you.
And because the infrastructure of that life is so incredibly solid, the mortgage, the societal approval, the familial applause, it becomes exceptionally difficult to question it.
How do you complain when everything is quote-unquote perfect?
Think about it. If you have a chaotic life, if things are falling apart visibly, it's easy to point to the chaos and say, that is why I am unhappy.
Right, the problem is externalized.
Exactly. But when the structure is perfect, the unhappiness feels like a personal, moral failure.
Oh, absolutely.
You sit in your nice house with your stable partner and you think, there must be something fundamentally wrong with me for not being blissfully happy.
You turn it all inward.
You don't question the script. The societal programming tells us that if you check the boxes, the reward is happiness. When the happiness doesn't arrive, the escalator doesn't stop to let you off.
No, it just speeds up.
It just presents the next milestone as the promised cure.
Which brings us to a monumental turning point in Sally's story, the presentation of that next milestone.
The big one.
The huge one. Because for a long time, there was an independent life nestled within that marriage.
She had her own things going on.
She did. There were daily commutes to the office, meeting up with friends after work, weekends away in cozy countryside cottages, girls' trips in the sun.
The separate self.
She had a semblance of a separate self. And then right near her 28th birthday, that chapter came to an abrupt, screeching halt.
And the catalyst for this halt is fascinating because of how profoundly unromantic it was.
It is so bleak.
This was not a profound, tearful, late-night conversation about a deep, mutual desire to nurture a new human life together.
Not at all.
It was a single, almost administrative comment made on a Sunday morning.
Right. The reasoning he gave wasn't about love or readiness. It basically boiled down to, we should try for a baby, you're not getting any younger, and I'm tired of avoiding the question with my mom about when we are going to make her a grandmother.
The mother-in-law factor.
Just feel the weight of that for a second. Outsourcing a massive life-altering, identity-shifting decision to your mother-in-law's social calendar.
It's incredible.
The complete lack of romance. The absolute absence of mutual soul-deep readiness. It is staggering when you actually look at it plainly.
It is a breathtakingly clear example of cultural pressures dictating the most intimate aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
When we analyze the motivation behind that major life choice, we see that it is entirely external.
Completely.
It is driven by the perceived ticking of a biological clock, which is a deeply ingrained cultural anxiety for women and the intense pressure of familial expectation.
We just absorb it without fighting back.
What we're seeing here is the cultural myth that external milestones can resolve internal disconnection.
Right.
If the relationship feels a bit hollow, or if the momentum of the escalator is slowing down, the script says, have a baby.
That will fix it.
That will cement the bond. That will provide the ultimate shared project.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Having a child does not fix a lack of foundational intimacy. It never has. What it actually does is act as a massive magnifying glass on every single existing fracture within the partnership.
And the impact on the woman's identity is immediate, severe, and often permanent. The die is cast.
The previous chapter is closed.
Slammed shut. Suddenly, your entire existence is wrapped up in your ability to get pregnant, the physical preparation for the child, the physical and emotional maelstrom of the process.
That's all-consuming.
And then the baby arrives. And at first, it seems wonderful.
Right, the celebrations.
There is this massive rush of attention. Friends and family rally around. The house is full of flowers, visitors, and gifts. You feel like the center of the universe.
But that is a temporary state.
Very temporary.
It is a performance of community that surrounds the birth event, not a sustainable system of support for the reality of parenting.
Absolutely. Because then, as it always does, that attention slowly peters out.
Everyone goes home.
People go back to their jobs, their own families, their own lives, and you are left alone in the house.
To silence.
The silence becomes deafening. Now, Sally absolutely adored her baby. She would do anything for this child. But alongside that fierce love, she felt completely, profoundly unseen. The isolation of modern motherhood settles in like a heavy, suffocating fog.
It's structural isolation.
The woman who commuted, who had spontaneous weekends away, who had a name other than mom, is gone. And the new you is entirely defined by service to others.
This transition exposes a structural flaw in how we organize modern family life. We have dismantled the village.
We really have.
And in its place, we have isolated nuclear units. So when that profound sense of isolation and depression sets in, the mother turns to her only available adult connection.
Her partner.
Her partner. But the attempt to communicate this complex grief is often met with a defensive wall.
Oh, this part makes me so angry.
In Sally's case, when those feelings of being unseen, of mourning her past self were brought up, they were casually brushed off.
Yeah.
The response from her husband was simply, "It is probably your hormones."
Let's just pause on that. It is probably your hormones. It literally makes my blood run cold.
It's a classic dismissal.
Yeah. Because think about what that dismissal actually does. By blaming it on hormones, he is taking a perfectly normal, entirely valid human reaction, feeling lonely, feeling like you were disappearing, and turning it into a medical defect.
Precisely. It medicalizes and pathologizes a partner's valid emotional needs.
It's gaslighting.
It takes a massive structural problem, the geographical isolation of a nuclear family, the profound loss of individual identity, the glaring lack of emotional support from a partner, and reduces it all to a biological flaw in the woman.
Wow. Yes.
It is a brilliant, albeit incredibly toxic way for the other partner to entirely avoid accountability.
Because if it's medical, it's not his fault.
Exactly. If her sadness is just a chemical glitch, then the partner doesn't have to change their behavior.
Right.
They don't have to step up. They don't have to engage in emotional heavy lifting. They don't have to provide comfort or partnership. They just have to wait for the hormones to balance out.
It is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for an emotionally unavailable spouse.
It really is.
And it is devastating. Because when your partner, the person who is supposed to be your safe harbor, the one person who is supposed to have your back against the world, tells you that your reality isn't real, it breaks something fundamental.
It breaks trust.
When they tell you that your profound loneliness is just a glitch in your endocrine system, it forces you to carry your pain in absolute silence. It shuts down intimacy completely.
Why even try to explain?
Exactly. What is the point of trying to explain yourself? You stop trying. You end up seeking out medical support, maybe getting a prescription because society and your partner are telling you that your totally understandable reaction to isolation is a disease that needs curing.
Rather than a natural response.
Rather than seeing it as a completely natural response to being erased from your own life, you become a ghost in your own home.
A ghost managing logistics.
You are managing the logistics of life. You are buying the nappies. You are doing the laundry. You are keeping the human beings alive, but your soul is starving.
And the systemic isolation compounds this starvation. If we look at the geography and the social structures of modern parenthood, it is practically designed to isolate.
It's terrible.
Sally's university friends are scattered all over the country, dealing with their own families, their own careers. The built-in social structures of her 20s, the pubs, the spontaneous office drinks, the shared flats, were completely gone.
Vanished.
And if you were not naturally an outrageously extroverted person, the prospect of creating a brand new social network from scratch, while sleep-deprived and caring for an infant, is a monumental, almost impossible task.
You don't have the energy for it.
You are cut off from the tribe at the exact moment you need the tribe the most.
So survival instinct kicks in. You try to find a lifeline.
You have to.
You try to find a way to pull yourself out of the water. And in this journey for Sally, that lifeline started with an online coding course.
A very specific choice.
It was. It was about finding a challenge that had absolutely nothing to do with domesticity, re-engaging the analytical part of the brain, finding a part-time role that could be done from home.
It was a way to regain a tiny, tiny sliver of agency.
Yes. A piece of the world that belonged only to her. Not to the baby, not to the husband, just hers.
It was a mechanism for reclaiming intellectual territory. But while the intellectual stimulation was there, the deep human connection was still entirely missing. Coding provided logic and structure, but it couldn't provide emotional validation.
Right. So you turn to where society tells mothers to turn when they need connection. Mainstream moms groups.
Oh boy.
The online forums, the local coffee mornings, the play dates. And the reality of those spaces can be incredibly, profoundly alienating.
Very escape.
Because you walk into those rooms and there is often this thick, impenetrable layer of toxic positivity.
The performance.
Nobody's talking honestly about the messy, painful realities.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about the resentment bubbling under the surface.
Is that allowed?
Nobody is talking about the fact that your sex life has dwindled to maybe 3 times a month. And even then, it is completely unsatisfying and feels like another chore.
Right.
You are sitting in a circle of women or scrolling through a forum, and everyone is performing perfect motherhood.
Performing is the exact word.
And you realize, with the sinking feeling in your chest, that even among your supposed peers, you are still wearing a mask. The superficiality of that mainstream support leaves you feeling even more alone than if you were actually sitting in an empty room.
That superficiality is a collective protective mechanism.
How so?
Well, the broader culture does not provide a functional vocabulary for the complex grief of losing your identity to motherhood. We simply do not have the societal language for it.
We really don't.
So these groups default to discussing the logistics of parenting, sleep schedules, weaning techniques, developmental milestones,
The safe stuff.
which are important, yes, but they are safe, sanitized topics. Discussing the death of desire or the feeling of being emotionally abandoned by a spouse who blames your sadness on hormones,
Yeah.
that requires a level of vulnerability and emotional literacy that most mainstream spaces simply do not foster. They are spaces of performance, designed to uphold the myth of the perfectly fulfilled mother, not spaces of healing.
Which is why finding the right vocabulary changes everything. It is like being handed a map when you've been wandering in the dark.
It alters the landscape.
And this brings us to the incredible catalyst in Sally's journey, stumbling across a podcast that actually talked about the difficult, shadowy things.
The Connection Audit.
Hearing these incredibly frank conversations about ethical non-monogamy, about boundaries, about insecurity, about jealousy, and most importantly, about repair.
Repair is huge.
Now, let's be clear. This wasn't about Sally wanting to open up a failing marriage. That wasn't the goal at all.
No, not at all.
The goal was finding a language for the silent screams inside her head. When you have been starved of relational truth for years, hearing people speak honestly about relationship dynamics feels like breathing clean, sharp air for the very first time.
It provides an educational awakening. It offers a framework for understanding experiences that previously felt chaotic and unmanageable. Let's look at how that new vocabulary applies to a real-world scenario from Sally's life.
The coworker.
There was a situation with her husband's new female team member at work. He was mentioning her frequently, bringing her up in casual conversation.
And Sally's immediate internal response was a spike of intense jealousy.
And how do we normally react to that?
We hide it.
Under the old script, under the conventional societal programming that we are all fed, jealousy is a toxic trait.
It is a shameful secret.
It means you are crazy or insecure or controlling. You're supposed to suppress it. You're supposed to pretend you are the cool wife who doesn't get bothered by these things.
The cool wife. Ugh.
But through the lens of emotional literacy, the lens she was beginning to adopt, we deconstruct jealousy entirely.
We reframe it.
Exactly. Jealousy is not a character flaw. It is not a moral failing. It is an alarm bell.
Yes.
It is vital data. It is a signal pointing directly towards an unmet need or a perceived threat to the security of the attachment.
It's information.
When we stop suppressing jealousy, when we stop shaming ourselves for feeling it and start interrogating it instead, it becomes a phenomenal teacher.
It forces you to ask, why does this feel threatening?
Yeah.
What is missing in our dynamic that makes this outside presence feel so dangerous?
Right.
The bravery to look at that feeling, that ugly, uncomfortable knot in your stomach and say, what are you trying to tell me?
It takes guts.
It took immense courage for her to take the messaging from those conversations and use it to finally ask the difficult questions.
To disrupt the peace.
And not just interrogating her husband about his new colleague, but interrogating herself. That is the hardest part.
Always.
Looking in the mirror after years of living for other people and asking, what are my actual desires? What are my actual needs? Where are my boundaries? And why have I let them be trampled on for so long?
Because she had buried them.
When you have spent your entire adult life pleasing your families, paying the mortgage, raising the child, and performing the role of the good wife, you bury your own desires so deep you literally forget what they look like.
You lose contact with yourself.
Unearthing them is terrifying. It is this desperate longing for relational truth. You start wondering, can these unspoken frustrations be repaired? Can we actually rebuild this marriage on a foundation of honesty instead of a foundation of what we are supposed to do?
But the tragedy of the old script is that it often cannot withstand the introduction of the truth.
It crumbles.
The architecture of a relationship built on compliance is incredibly fragile. You attempt to bring this new, robust emotional literacy into a dynamic that was built entirely on avoidance and external validation, and the structure simply starts to buckle.
It cannot hold the weight of authenticity.
It wasn't designed to.
And then comes the absolute collapse.
The betrayal.
The revelation of the betrayal. The affair. The devastating realization that while you were doing the agonizing, lonely internal work to try and save the connection, while you were trying to find a vocabulary to fix the broken parts, The other person had simply stepped outside of it.
They bypass the work entirely.
They took the easy way out. And what follows is the adherence to the classic breakup script.
A separation.
The obligatory, often agonizing attempt at couples counseling, which, let's be honest, often feels like putting a plaster on a bullet wound when one person has already completely checked out.
It's going through the motions.
And then finally, the inevitable divorce.
The sequence of those events is highly predictable, but the emotional toll is catastrophic.
The devastation of that blow cannot be overstated. Imagine it.
It's a lot.
You followed all the rules, you got the degree, the house, the family approval, you gave up your identity for the marriage and the child, you endured the crushing loneliness of being told your sadness was just hormones.
You did everything right.
You tried to do the emotional work, and the reward for all of that compliance is absolute betrayal. And your world, which had already narrowed so much, shrinks even further. The grief is suffocating. It takes the breath right out of your lungs.
And then we add the modern weaponization of that grief.
Social media.
Social media.
Oh, this social media element is a very specific, very modern kind of torture.
It's vicious.
Watching the ex-husband immediately paint this picture-perfect new life on Facebook, it takes our internal devastation and contrasts it with someone else's curated performance of happiness.
It's an illusion, but it hurts.
It rubs salt directly into the deepest, most tender wounds, because you are sitting there, a single parent, dealing with the fallout, the logistics, the heartbreak, and your screen is showing you a narrative where he is completely unscathed.
It rewrites history.
It makes you feel like you were the problem all along. It whispers to you, look how easily he moved on, look how happy he is now. You must have been the flaw in the system.
This dynamic exposes the ultimate glaring failure of the old script.
How do you mean?
The cultural narrative sells us a very specific insurance policy. It says that if we get the degree, buy the house, pay the mortgage, and secure the family approval, we are building a fortress.
We think we're safe.
We believe those milestones offer protection against pain. But the reality is, they offer absolutely no protection against betrayal.
None.
They offer no protection against profound emotional neglect. And they offer no protection against the dissolution of the partnership.
The mortgage does not care if you are lonely.
Exactly. The family approval cannot stop a partner from having an affair. The old script is a set of logistical achievements. It is not a framework for emotional resilience.
So when the crisis inevitably hits, the script leaves you completely emotionally bankrupt.
You have no tools.
So there you are, standing in the rubble of this life you built so carefully. You are divorced, you are a single parent, you are navigating this immense oceanic grief.
And eventually
you try to look forward, you decide you are ready to connect again, you dip your toe into the modern dating world, you download the apps.
a whole new nightmare.
You spend months on mainstream platforms, and it is an absolute wasteland.
It's rough out there.
The sheer exhaustion of it is bone deep. You have just survived the collapse of a marriage that fundamentally lacked emotional depth, and now you are supposed to swipe through endless profiles of people who can barely articulate what they want for dinner, let alone what they want from a partnership.
Let us critique the architecture of that modern dating culture.
Yeah.
Because it is crucial to understanding why it is so alienating.
Please.
Mainstream dating apps are fundamentally misaligned with what someone in this position is actually seeking. These platforms prioritize access over education.
Right.
They prioritize sheer volume over actual compatibility. They were designed from the ground up as a gamified meat market.
A gamified meat market. That is exactly what it feels like.
For a woman, particularly a single mother who has already paid the incredibly high price of emotional illiteracy in her previous marriage, seeking depth and honesty on a platform designed for rapid consumption is deeply draining.
It burns you out.
The apps demand that you market yourself, that you perform, all while exposing you to a relentless barrage of low-effort interactions. It is a system designed to create fatigue, not connection. It relies on endless searching.
It is soul-destroying.
It is.
Because you are going on these dates, and you are realizing that you are expected to be the emotional manager of a complete stranger.
You're doing the work for them.
You are expected to teach grown men basic emotional intelligence over a cup of coffee. And what you are actually craving is safety.
Psychological safety.
Not just physical safety, although that is always a concern, but profound psychological safety. You are craving a space where you do not have to explain why honesty matters.
Where it's already understood.
Where you do not have to justify your need for clear communication. Which brings us to the pivot. Returning to the concept she heard on that podcast. The concept of a radically different kind of community. The Blossom Society.
This represents a fundamental shift in strategy,
Yeah.
moving away from spaces that prioritize access and toward a space rooted in entirely different principles.
Yes. A space rooted in the principles of ethical non-monogamy, but, crucially, a space where women are sovereign, where education comes before access.
That changes the whole game.
If we ask the core question, why would a woman who has been through all of this, who isn't even necessarily looking for non-monogamy, join a community like that?
What's the draw?
The answer is profound. It represents a completely new paradigm of safety. Think about her journey. For someone who has been repeatedly dismissed, whose valid emotions were called just hormones, whose core needs were ignored, finding a space where boundaries are absolute prerequisites, not afterthoughts, is like finding an oasis in a desert.
It's the antithesis of the dating apps.
It really is.
The structure of a community like that changes the entire dynamic of human interaction. This is the key sociological difference.
Education first.
When education comes before access, it acts as a vital filter. It means that everyone you interact with has a baseline understanding of emotional literacy.
They speak the language.
They understand consent. They understand self-reflection. You are no longer responsible for teaching grown adults how to communicate their feelings.
The relief of that.
The psychological safety that provides is immense. It allows the nervous system to finally truly settle. You can engage without having your guard up constantly because the community standards enforce the boundaries for you.
The nervous system settling, that is the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Truly.
So she takes the plunge. She uses that 3-month free access for single women. She decides to be bold, to try something entirely outside her previous script.
A completely new path.
And the integration is beautiful to witness. She is surprised by how the platform operates, the sheer functionality of it, but more than that, she is deeply moved by the genuine community focus.
Just seen.
She isn't just a profile to be swiped on. She is a human being entering a structured, supportive space. And she stays.
She stays because she has finally found a space where her experiences are validated.
Yes, where she doesn't have to perform perfect motherhood or cool wife or easygoing date.
She gonna be?
Where emotional literacy is the baseline expectation, not an impossible, exhausting demand. And then we see this incredible, beautiful, full circle moment unfold.
We see the merging of her past trauma and her present empowerment.
It's my favorite part of her journey.
During the loneliest, most profoundly isolated days of her marriage, her only lifeline was learning to code. It was a technical skill acquired in pure survival mode.
A raft to cling to.
A way to keep her brain from atrophy. But now, in this new, emotionally literate space, she takes that hard-won technical skill and she merges it with her newfound understanding of human connection.
She steps up.
Yeah.
She looks around this community that provided the safety she so desperately needed, and she decides she wants to give back to it. She becomes a paid moderator.
So it becomes a pillar.
She becomes a key part of the technical team, ensuring the platform runs smoothly for other women seeking the same sanctuary.
Taking ownership.
She reclaims her identity, she reclaims her agency, she reclaims her career, and she does it entirely on her own terms.
Not someone else's script.
She is no longer following a script written by someone else, handed down by society and family expectations. She is literally writing the code for a community that empowers other women to find their own sovereignty.
It is the ultimate reclamation of self.
It is taking the tool you learned in the dark and using it to build a lighthouse.
If we look at the entire arc of this narrative, it is a masterclass in shedding the conditioning that keeps us small.
A masterclass.
It provides a stark illustration that the destruction of the old life, as agonizing and chaotic as it was the necessary prerequisite for the creation of a life that actually fits.
The escalator had to break down.
The escalator had to break down for her to finally learn how to walk on her own.
It had to break down. It is just such a powerful reminder that our deepest pain is so often the compass pointing us toward our truest purpose. The chaos is the crucible.
So what are the 3 key takeaways we can pull from this incredible journey?
First, the danger of the default script. Following the culturally approved path, the degree, the mortgage, the acceptable milestones, without constantly, rigorously asking if it aligns with your internal needs, often leads to a profound loss of self.
You just disappear.
This is especially true for women transitioning into motherhood, where the societal expectation is complete self-sacrifice. You have to be brave enough to write your own script.
Second, jealousy and discomfort are compasses.
Yes.
Uncomfortable emotions aren't things to be brushed away as just hormones or personal flaws to be ashamed of. They are vital pieces of relational truth. When explored with emotional literacy rather than suppressed, they lead to necessary awakenings and the discovery of unmet needs.
And third, the power of intentional community. Mainstream dating and conventional social structures often prioritize sheer access and superficial performance.
The gamified system.
Finding or building spaces that prioritize education, psychological safety, and sovereignty can be the ultimate antidote to the profound loneliness of modern life.
Before we close today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
We spend so much of our lives terrified of the moment the carefully constructed picture falls apart. We expend massive amounts of energy trying to hold the crumbling pieces together. But what if the collapse of the life you are supposed to have is the only way to make room for the life you actually deserve?
Wow.
What if the chaos of losing the script is the exact environment required to finally find your voice?
Thanks for listening to the Connection Audit today. Our only ask is, if you know one person who you feel would benefit from listening to our conversation, please mention the Connection Audit and point them in our direction. Let's start a conversation about how we can build better connections. And if you have any questions, a theme, or topic you'd like us to cover, please give us a like, leave a comment, and we'll get it scheduled into the running order. Be kind to yourself.
Until next time, less scrolling, more soul.